Hey everybody, I know it's been a few days since I made a video. God's so good. He just wants us to be close to Him. I don't really have a lot of encouraging words to put out today, but I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm feeling okay and everything's going pretty well. The battles are always raging in the spirit. The devil's always trying to catch us up somehow. So just keep your guard up. Put your spiritual armor on, the helmet of salvation and the breastplate of righteousness, the sword of the Spirit, and gird our loins with the truth. Put on the shoes for the readiness of the gospel. Just be ready, guys. We're in such a big spiritual battle right now. I do plan on still telling my story. I suppose I could start now. Where to begin, though? So, I would have to say that my journey started when I lived in Kansas City, and I ended up leaving Kansas City and moving to Florida. My boyfriend and I at the time, we broke up, and I moved to Florida to be closer to my aunt, who was my dad's sister, and I lived there for 2 years, and it was kind of really a dry spell. I didn't find a good church, and I didn't really have friends there. It was just a dry time, about 2 years. It was just very dry. And I ended up moving to Texas in 2002, and I had met someone online, and I ended up moving there, well, about 2 hours away from this person so we could meet and figure it out. Well, I ended up moving to Arlington, and I lived there for, this person and I were together 6 years, and then I moved, I didn't mean to say I moved. There came a time when God said to me, this isn't what I have for you. And I wasn't really sure what that meant. I mean, I knew it meant this isn't what God had for me, but I was perfectly happy. I wasn't living right, and I knew that's what God was talking about. And I said, God, how am I just supposed to leave this person? And He said, this isn't what I have for you. And I said, I can't just leave. How could I just hurt someone for no reason? And so I said, okay, God, I need your help. And I ended up leaving. And I lived in a nice townhouse. Turns out I had to break the lease 2 months after I moved in. And my mom was staying with me at the time, and my sister had just gotten out of prison. And it just wasn't what God had for me. And so we ended up moving into this nice place down the road to this place that we now lovingly call the dump. Why the dump, you say? Well, there was mold in the dishwasher. We never even opened it after that day. When we moved in and we saw there was mold, we knew that there was nothing the landlord was going to do to improve the place. They never even fixed the window in the bedroom the whole time we lived there. But so after that trying time, we were going through it. I was the only one working. My sister hadn't found a job yet. My mom hadn't found a job yet. And so, I mean, we were just kind of struggling. I was paying my car payment, but not the rent, because you can live in your car, but you can't drive your house. And I had to still have a way to work. So I was paying my car payment and buying what little food I could. And we were surviving. I didn't have electricity for about 6 months. And it's because I came from Kansas City, where you only have one option. There's only one place that you can get electricity from. But in Texas, they had started where you could prepay your electric, or you could pay as you go your electric. And so finally, after 6 months, I heard that commercial, and I ended up getting electricity that way. But we were just struggling and struggling and struggling. And one night, a little girl came to my sister at church and said, God told me to tell you that you don't have to look for a house because he's going to find you one. My sister said, did you know we were looking? And Camille said, you are? She had no idea. She just came over by the leading of the Holy Ghost to say what she had felt in her spirit. So, some time passed. I don't even know how long from the time she said that to the time it was that we were having to move out of the dump. We didn't live there very long, a few months. And maybe a year, I don't even remember. But the dump was being foreclosed on, and we had to move. So we're packing and packing, still not knowing where we're going to go. We had been looking for a place, and there was nothing for rent in our price range. Nothing. And we looked and looked and looked. We went and looked at these other dumps, and it was in Texas. So it's a very humid place, and they had swamp coolers for cooling. Well, you can't have a swamp cooler in a very high humidity area because it just causes condensation. So it was raining in the office where we went to go look at these apartments, and they were super tiny. Everything I owned wouldn't even fit in 2 of them, so we would have to get a storage locker and 2 apartments because my sister and I and my mom and her friend. And I was like, Crystal, everything we have won't even fit in here. And so economically, we would have just been still drowning. So I withdrew my application. I got my deposit back. My sister got her deposit back. But it was a tough time. It was such a tough time. And I said to my mom, I was like, I can't look anymore. And my sister was angry. She said, I have to have an address. She was on probation and she had to have an address. I said, it's in God's hands now. There's nothing I can do about it. And it caused so much strife in my family. And I said to my mom one day, because like I said, it got pretty ugly. And I said, Mom, what if I told you that I would spend every minute devoted to looking for you a place? Would you still look? And it took her a couple of minutes, and she said, I might. So I prayed about it, and a couple of days later, it came to me, and I said, Mom, what if you called me and said, hey, will you bring home a loaf of bread? And I confirmed you with you, because we called on God, and he confirmed with us through Camille. So I confirmed with you that I was going to bring home a loaf of bread. Would you call your friends and ask them for a loaf of bread? She said, well, no. I said, would you look in the newspaper for a loaf of bread? And she was like, no. I said, God finding us a house is as easy as me bringing you home a loaf of bread, and I'm not looking anymore. So we ended up staying with some friends for a month, and my sister was just so angry because it came to where we had to move out of the dump. My dad died. We had to come to Kansas City for the funeral, and when we got back, we had 3 days left to move out. And gosh, that was tough. But so we moved in with our friends, and we stayed with them for about a month, and when we had been looking, I saw that me and Mom saw this place, and I said, "Hey, Mama, how would you like to live there?" And she said, "Pfft, like we could afford that." And so one day my friend Linda called me and she said, "Hey, there's a house available in my neighborhood. How much did you say that you could pay for rent?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, this one's too much." And she said, "Well, I saw a house on Calendar Road." And I said, "Oh, I have some numbers for those places. What's the phone number?" And she told me. I said, "Oh, I don't have that phone number." And she said, "Well, would you like me to call?" I said, "If you like, or you could give me the phone number." Well, she ended up calling, and because God uses his people to do his work. He's not going to just knock on the door and be like, "Hey, I'm God and I'm here to get Angie a house." He uses his people to do his work. So she kind of had to be the one to call. And so I ended up talking to the guy. I told him that my sister was on probation and that she was a felon, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we just don't rent to felons." And I said, "Well, what if I told you that when she was in prison, she gave her life to Christ? And if you talk to her probation officer, he would tell you that she has the skinniest file that he has seen in his career." He said, "I'm sorry, we just don't rent to felons." And I said, "Okay, sir, well, thank you for your time." He called me back and he asked me for her probation officer's name. I gave him the wrong name. I was so excited I had to call him back and give him the right name. To be continued.